Here is the main shaft bearing assembly. There is a rubber seal on top. Then there is a little washer under the rubber seal that will not come off. Okay, put it here. And then you have the bushing inside the nut. So just gently push it out with something. You don't need a lot of force. It's not actually metal into metal. There is a... Oh! That's why I hate doing this. It's a brass bushing with a rubber seal around it. That's not even a seal, but the purpose of this rubber seal is to soften the metal to metal stress. It works as a shock absorber. Now, there's a difference in the schematics of the 2000 and 2500 size. In the 2500 size schematics, you just put the bearing inside and you're done. And you put on top the washer and the rubber seal. That's the same on both reels. But in the 2000 size, there is a part number of a rubberized washer that goes on the bottom of the nut first, and then the bearing goes on top of that rubberized washer. And I actually purchased two of them. So I'm gonna put, this part is not supposed to be in the 2500 size, but I mean everything else is the same, so I'm gonna put it here anyway. Yeah, it fits perfectly. I prefer to have it for sure. Yep. And we're done with this. Alright folks, the next modification we're gonna do is replace this plastic bushing here, the white plastic bushing that supports the spool, and this entire assembly goes on the main shaft like this. Okay, so this is a very easy bushing to replace. Just remove the spool and this guy will show. I don't think this plastic bushing does much to begin with, so you don't have to buy expensive bearing for this one. I bought one from Hedgehog, the one that you see here. So I'm gonna just swap them. It's a very easy swap, nothing tricky can happen here. Here we go, the bearing is installed. There is a little spring clip here that holds it. I don't know if you can see, but it's good to go here. And then just on top of the main shaft. Alright, I'll see you soon. All you need to replace the oscillation worm bushing here with a bearing is a Torx number 6, available everywhere. Do not buy this in Japan. And a regular small Phillips screwdriver. Okay, you don't need Japanese tools for this. This little plate here is covering the bushing. The bushing is right here. So just unscrew this little screw here, Phillips screw, and you can remove the plate and with some luck remove the bushing without opening the reel at all. Look at the reel. I have even the handle. You do not need to open anything to replace this bushing here. Okay, here is the plastic bushing, the white plastic bushing. It's already coming out. Now hold the reel like this, very gently, very carefully. And when you just push the spool deeper just a little bit, the oscillation worm will come out like this. And you can remove the plastic bushing Very easy. Now there are two washers here under the plastic bushing, and remove only one of them. It will be oh, I have three here. Interesting. Okay, put one washer back. I don't care how many you get, but put one washer back. Then put your bearing. Okay. And then gently plug it back in. We're gonna put one more washer on top of the bearing, but first we have to put the bearing back where it came from. If it doesn't go right away, just hold the reel from the top and probably vertically, and very slowly rotate the rotor until it pops back in. Try not to push the spool out, just rotate the rotor. Oops, I felt it. I felt it went in. And now I can put a washer on top of the bearing. And I did remove one washer from under the, oh, that's beautiful, from under the bearing, just so I have a little space for the washer that I'm gonna put behind the bearing. The purpose of the washer behind the bearing, actually I don't want to drop something, but take a quick look at this before I close it, and then I'm gonna tell you why you need this washer here behind the bearing. Guys, let me quickly explain why you need to put a shim on top of the bearing after you install the bearing in the frame. Imagine this here is the little bearing, okay? If we don't put a shim here, that little metal plate that's holding the bearing from popping out of the frame will be touching the bearing. Now, if the plate touches the inner wall of the bearing, then the inner wall of the bearing cannot spin. Then all that you did was replace a plastic bushing with a metal bushing, which is actually worse. So definitely the correct way to install this bearing is to put a shim behind the bearing. So when the plate is pushing the bearing, it's pushing only the outer wall of the bearing, but not the inner wall of the bearing. So check in the previous frames of the video, I put the right size for the shim here. It has to be 4 by 6 by 0.01 millimeter. You can go a little thicker if you remove one shim from in front of the bearing, but the inner and outer diameters have to be 4 millimeter by 6 millimeter. Otherwise, the inner wall of the bearing is not gonna spin, and all that you did was replace a plastic bushing with a metal. Okay folks, the reels are all done, and here are the bearing sizes if you want to do this yourself. The main shaft support is 4 by 8 by 2.5. I saw in some Russian videos they were saying that it's 5 by 8 by 2.5, but both of my reels, this bushing here is 4 by 8 by 2.5. Okay. Did all of this make any difference at all? First of all, the 2500 size, I did not open this reel. I did not do anything to this reel other than add the bearings, and that was a very non-invasive procedure. I just removed this plate here, I removed the little plate behind it, and I removed the bushing, put one bearing, added one little shim, and that was it. And I also put 2 more bearings here, but those didn't require opening the reel either, just removing the spool and a couple of small screws. So this reel, it's still stuck, everything inside the body here. I literally only added these 3 bearings. And I can tell you, I cannot feel a damn difference with this reel. Just absolutely nothing. I mean, it feels very nice, but it already felt very nice before. I honestly do not believe that a human can tell the difference between the reel with these 3 bearings and without them in a blind test. I know all of you can do it when you put your own bearings inside, but in a blind test, I don't think human perception is enough to tell the difference. That on this reel. The little one, I did a very invasive, complete disassembly twice. The first time I put too thick grease, it felt like total crap. Then I completely disassembled it, even actually deeper than the first time, because the first time I didn't remove these little plastic, idle gears. Second time I removed everything, I cleaned everything, and when I put it back, I had literally just 2 dabs of grease on the main gear, and everything else, the entire reel was just oiled. So the reel now actually has less grease than it had stock. It just has some oil. This reel does feel very different from brand new, in good and in a bad way. The reel definitely feels more free now, just a lot more free spinning. So this is good and bad, because on one hand, when it's more free, it doesn't have the stock tightness. When you get it stock, it has significantly more resistance than what I have now. But this resistance kind of gives it tightness and stock feel. Now my reel feels very free, but it doesn't have the stock tightness. And also with the lower resistance, I think my reel is a little bit louder now. But for me, I personally prefer this free feeling. The roughness, I said in my review, the 2000 size has a roughness that I don't feel in the 2500 size. The roughness is still here. And after I assembled it the first time and it was packed with grease, it had a lot of resistance, but I didn't feel the roughness. So that's how it goes with reels. Thick grease, a lot of grease definitely makes the reel feel smoother, but adds a resistance. That's up to you, whichever is more important to you. For me, in ultralight finesse reels, sizes 2000 and smaller, the free spinning is more important than smoothness and than roughness. But to get back to the replacement of the bearings itself, and not to confuse the 2 issues, the bearings replacement and the greasing of the reels, do I recommend replacing the bushings of either of these 2 reels with bearings? Absolutely not. First of all, you're gonna spend a lot of money. These bearings, I don't care where you get them, directly from Japan or from SHIMANO USA or from Hedgehog. These bearings are very expensive. Just look at the price of this guy here. This is the main shaft support bearing. These bearings are very expensive, and at the end of the day, you will not be able to tell the difference if you are honest with yourself, okay? And for sure, you are not gonna get a Vanquish, because the difference between this reel and a Vanquish is not just these 3 bearings, okay? Some of the bearings that are already in this reel, I found out, are actually not the same bearings that are in the Vanquish. So, and even if you got those bearings, let's say you replaced all of the bearings, you got all of the bearings in this reel to be exactly the same as they are in the Vanquish, which will cost you with shipping minimum $100. you still, even with all of the bearings the same as in Vanquish, you still are not gonna have a Vanquish, guys. The frame will be different, the tolerances will be different. I know the handle will be different. The handle of the Vanquish is lighter than this. I don't know the other subtle differences that I'm not aware of, but you're gonna shell a ton of money and you're still not gonna have a Vanquish. Guys, if you want a Vanquish, just buy a Vanquish. Just don't run around and tell people that you put a bunch of bearings and now your reel is just as good as a Vanquish, because you sound, honestly, you sound like a fool. Okay, at least that's my opinion on it. But yeah, that's all I have for this video, guys. I know you're gonna have a lot of comments and questions, but thank you for watching this one. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.